Hey there, church family. This is Pastor James coming to you from the Fortress of Solitude with a special video that I'd like to talk with you for just a few minutes about uh, some of the teaching I did this past Sunday in the worship service with the idea when I talked about Matthew 24, particularly verses 40 through 41, and the expression Jesus uses twice here that one will be taken and the other left. And I know that, and I think I even mentioned this in the sermon, that for many of us, we didn't grow up hearing this about this passage because it has been taught to us as referring to the end of things. But I wanted to read to you out of one of a trusted scholar that I used in my preparation for studying this, and this is Scott McKnight, Dr. Scott McKnight, and he has written a wonderful series of commentaries on the New Testament called New Testament Everyday uh, Bible Study. And he has written a volume on each of the books in the New Testament. These are designed for lay people. These are designed for pastors, really anyone who wants to dig into uh, the nuances of the Gospels and the other documents in the New Testament. And they come with study questions and also uh, sources, other resources that you can go to if you'd like to explore the topics a little bit more. Now, I'm only going to highlight a few things here because I don't want this to be a very long video, but I just want to let you know where I'm coming from when I say that actually it's the ones who are taken who are the ones that are in trouble, and the ones who are left are the ones that survive. And this is because um, I believe that this passage, and it's been based on study with Scott McKnight, with N.T. Wright, with my studies in seminary and other readings that I have done, that this this passage, if read well, um, very much like Revelation, falls into that category of Jewish, what Scott McKnight calls Jewish eschatology. Um, he says here in his book on page 353 that Christian eschatology, to be frank, has often lost its way because it has left the path charted by uh, these five themes that come up in Jewish eschatology. And he gets this from uh, Deuteronomy chapters 28 through 34. And let me read you the, the five signs of Jewish eschatology, just to kind of grease the tracks here. First, God chose and formed a covenant with Abram and Sarai to become Abraham and Sarah, and through their descendants, the patriarchs, God formed Israel, God's own possession and people. That's number one. Number two, second, on the basis of the covenant, God gave to Israel the law, or the Torah, to guide Israel's life in the land. And third, God promised Israel that if they lived faithfully, obedience, according to the covenant and law, God would bless them beyond measure. God also warned Israel that if they failed to live faithfully, disobedience, God would discipline and judge Israel and send Israel into exile. Along with discipline, God would absent the temple. He would leave the temple. Um, Matthew 23, verse 38 is a reference here. Two exiles punctuate the story of Israel into Assyria, 10 tribes, and Judah into Babylon, 2 tribes. And both of those exiles reminding God's covenant people of the promises and warnings they had been given. And you can read about that in the pages of the prophets and in the histories found in 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Now, fourth, God promised that following the disciplines of exile, all Israel would return to the land and to Mount Zion. Israel's eschatology is a 12 tribe people. 10 of the tribes at the time of Jesus, to put a marker on it, were still in exile. Remember, too, that Jew comes from Judah and Judea, and it's only one tribe in the larger compass of Israel. So Israel is a 12 tribe people. They're not a one tribe people. Okay? So, and finally, when all 12 tribes return to the land, all Israel will be saved, and all Israelites will be blessed, and all the land will flourish. Since the 10 tribes were still in the dispersion and scattered undetectably throughout the world, the mission of the earliest church to the nations was to the scattered people of Israel. The Jewish expressions for this future are kingdom of God, the new heavens and the new earth, the age to come, some call it eternal life, and especially for Christian theology, heaven. The age to come would be altogether just, peaceful, and loving. And the future kingdom is idyllic and idealistic, yet real and on earth. And this is Scott McKnight, pages 352 and 353. So this paragraph, and then I'm going to skip to the portion of the text that has brought, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have questions asked about this. Matthew 24, if read well, must be placed into that 5-theme sketch of Jewish eschatology. Christian eschatology, again, as he said, to be frank, has lost its way. Now, what is happening in Matthew 24 and 25? Jesus is warning Jerusalem and its leaders. This is the typical audience of the prophet's warnings of yet another divine discipline, perhaps like what was experienced at the hand of the armies of Assyria and Babylon, but this time at the hand of Rome. And that is, this is again McKnight, if Jerusalem does not turn back to covenant faithfulness, they will suffer the destruction from Rome. Now, the audience of Matthew 24, and this is very, I think, important for this view, is Jerusalem. And the chronological location of these warnings is about AD 30, with the explicit prediction, Jesus says this in this text. All of this will come to pass within a generation. Remember, Jesus says, this generation will not pass away until all of this has taken place. And for me, that is where the problem comes when reading a text like Matthew 24 and 25, when Jesus explicitly says that all of this is going to come on this generation if they continue in their disobedience. It becomes what I call pulling the taffy a bit too far to stretch this to the end, to stretch this to the end of all things. Okay? Prophets in the history of Israel always jammed the imminent redemption and discipline of God up against the final act in history as well. This gave the sense that the next event was the last event, with the present facing eternity. All right? There's also the theme of covenant here. No theme resonates more deeply in God's covenant with Israel than the goodness and grace and love of God that formed the relationship and that urges the people of God to live faithfully in that covenant. And that frames in Matthew's gospel the brunt of Jesus's call of faithful discipleship. Now, I want to go over, there's a lot more I could say. There's a lot about signs and more signs. Jesus talks about the time. And then in the section where he talks about one will be taken and one will be left, he is talking about what life is going to be like in light of the signs that he has just mentioned. Okay? And I'm going to start reading here, and it'll be verses 36 through 41. That will incorporate what I was talking about. Okay? People will be caught off guard if they are not discerning of the signs during that generation. They will be caught off guard as it was, he says, in the days of Noah. Now, in that passage, Jesus imagines ordinary life being interrupted by the Son of Man. And he twice uses the expression, here it is, one will be taken and the other left. This is in chapter 24, verses 40 to 41, which, if we read it as the audience is Jerusalem, if we read it just as that, then we come to this conclusion that those taken, some will be killed by the Romans, taken, and some surviving, which is left. So the question then becomes, how then do we live during that generation? Jesus wants his kingdom followers to keep watch or to be alert, because the Son of Man's coming will resemble a thief doing the deed under the cover of darkness. Jesus urges his disciples to be faithful and wise in a singular sense. He wants them to do what he has called them to do. If the follower of Jesus goes AWOL on Jesus, he or she will experience divine discipline. Chapter 24, verses 45 through 51. More ominously, Jesus warns those who reject him with final judgment. And that comes in Matthew 25 with that parable of the sheep and the goats. All right? So, having said all of that, it takes a reorientation of this text, not merely referring to the end of all things and being wrapped up in dispensationalism, particularly premillennial dispensational, which includes the themes of rapture and tribulation and that schematic of end things. What it takes is that we read the text itself as referring to, and remember the sentence Jesus utters, this generation will not pass away until all of these things have taken place. And so for me, not to the exclusion of other views, but for me on this passage, Jesus is speaking absolutely to Jerusalem in these chapters, foreseeing the destruction. The Chosen picks up on this. In the fifth season, Jesus goes into Jerusalem and he all of a sudden starts seeing visions of blood on the walls that only he can see, and he begins to cry when he sees them. He cries out to Jerusalem, 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 how I've longed to gather you. And so when we read Matthew 24 and 25, if we're going to do it faithfully, let's do it in the under the lens of Jewish eschatology. Eschatology is just end things, Jewish end things. Whereas each of the exiles, Assyria, Babylon, and the destruction by Rome, would have been seen as the end. And so the language would always have been couched. The sun will be darkened, the moon will turn to blood in the great and glorious day of the Lord, but it may only be referring to that particular act. Now, for those that still hold the other view, this is one of those matters that for your pastor, this is a matter of opinion. I think it does matter how we read, how things are going to end up with our world, because it affects how we live in it. But when Matthew 24 and 25 are divorced from being about the end times, the very end, the end, capital T, capital E, I believe, and I have come to study and I don't do it just because, McKnight says it or N.T. Wright says it or R.T. France says it or whoever, Fred Craddock or whoever says it. I don't, it's not why. It has come after years of study, and it helps us to situate the biblical text. It helps us to read the Bible biblically, which sounds strange to say, but it helps us to take out the pieces that we have kind of read into it, and it allows us to exegete the text, which is to pull out of the text, instead of eisogete, which is to read into the text, which is to go into, oh, well, it obviously has to be talking about the end times. And so when we read it, we go into our reading of the text. So when you have a bald robed up preacher on Sunday morning standing up and saying that, well, actually, if we take a look at this text, it's the ones who are taken that are the ones in trouble, the ones that are left are the ones that are okay. Then I can understand how that might cause a kind of a ooh, because it has certainly happened to me in seminary classes and listening to sermons as well and reading books. So I get that. Anyway, this is not a correction video or anything like that. I believe this is a matter of opinion. And I believe that we need to exercise these kinds of things in love. And it doesn't mean that if I don't believe your way, that somebody better check my baptism card and make sure it's still valid. And it doesn't mean that for you as well. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we have a place here where we agree to disagree. My calling as a teacher and as a pastor and is to help help you to read the Bible more faithfully and more biblically. And I think that's something that we can do, and it certainly will help. But again, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody. I have my own opinions about this matter or that matter, this matter, that matter, just as you do. The important thing here is to make sure that we when we talk about this, that we do it in love, and we realize that the person across from us is not a heretic, not a crispy critter waiting to be deep fried when Jesus comes again. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope this helps. If you have further questions, if you'd like to pick up a copy of McKnight's work, I can highly recommend it. It's great with daily Bible reading. So I recommend it. And so this wasn't a commercial for this, but this is one of my main study partners when I'm preparing sermons. All right. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow with this week's midweek check-in. I hope you're having a great week and see you soon.